Hi, and welcome. I'm the Reverend Dr. Cheryl Gaver, Presbyterian minister of 3 congregations in Eastern Ontario. And thank you for joining us for our children's time today. As you can see in the background, there's a lot of geese there. And so today's story is about a goose, Gaylen Goose, and how he discovered he was not a super goose. When Gaylen Goose was young, very young, he was quite a handful. He never listened to his parents, well, practically never. And he got into all sorts of trouble. But he was also very talented and usually managed to get himself out of trouble as much as he got into it and without having to ask for help. Now, you might think that was a good thing, and usually it is. But in Gaylen's case, he began to think he could do it all himself. He didn't need anyone else in his life. He didn't need help from anyone. Now, don't get me wrong. Gaylen wasn't selfish. He wasn't mean. He didn't try to hurt anyone else. He didn't insult anyone. He was just a very independent goose who thought he could do it all himself. That is until the weather started turning cold. His family told him it was time to head south. He'd never been south before. He didn't want to go. He wanted to stay close to the woodlands just a little bit longer. His family told him again and again, it's time to go, get ready. The other geese were leaving. He needed to leave with them. Gaylen refused. His family told him that they were traveling a really long distance, going much further than he'd ever flown before. He needed to leave with them because he wouldn't be able to fly that far on his own. He'd get too tired. He might run into problems. Well, of course, that just made Gaylen angry because he thought he could do everything on his own. Eventually, his family gave up trying to convince him. They left with the others. His mother came to give him one last hug, and she was crying because she thought she would never see him again. Gaylen told her not to worry. He would soon join them when he was ready. I don't know why Gaylen didn't want to leave with the others. I guess he wanted to prove something to himself. Well, a couple of days later, Gaylen decided it was definitely too cold to stay in the woodlands. He said his goodbyes to the other animals and started to head south. He figured he'd be able to catch up with them. He was a fast flyer. He could fly faster than most of them. And anyway, they would be flying in a group, so they'd have to slow down to wait for the slow ones to catch up. Well, Gaylen flew and flew, and he flew, and he flew, and he flew, and he flew. He was getting tired. He finally had stopped for the night. And then he realized he was so tired and he wasn't sure he could fly the next day. At that rate, he realized he would never be able to catch up with the other geese, and he started to get scared. Well, the next day, he was stiff. He couldn't do much. He ate some food, drank some water, and wondered what he was going to do next. He slept. Sometime later that same day, he looked and he saw another bunch of geese had landed. So after they introduced themselves to one another, one of them asked Gaylen why he was alone. Where were the others? He was too ashamed to tell the truth. So he answered, I got lost and then I got tired. Well, you can join us, they told him. And for a moment, Gaylen was going to answer the way he always did. I can do it on my own. But then he decided it was better to just nod and keep silent and decide later. Well, one goose, her name was Goldie. She'd been watching Gaylen the whole time. Now, she was a mother, and she knew what it was to have young geese and see them independent and thinking they could do everything. So she figured out what was really going on with Gaylen. So she went up to him and said, when we fly together, it's actually easier than when we fly on our own. Gaylen looked at her. He didn't really believe it. Well, you see, there's something called wind resistance. And if there's a strong wind, you're fighting it the whole time. It's hard to fly on your own. Gaylen didn't answer, but he was listening, so she continued. When we fly all together, we break that wind resistance. We sort of help one another. There's a lead bird, and he takes a whole bunch. He takes that wind, and then it sort of dissipates, and we can sort of tag along. It makes it easier for us. And then when he's tired, we just sort of shift. He or she falls back into the group, and someone else takes over. And that way, no one gets tired, really tired, and no one gets sore. Gaylen still said nothing, but he did nod, and after a while, he did thank her. The flock of geese got ready to take off again. Goldie asked him, "Are you coming with us?" He did. It was so much easier flying with the others. He wasn't nearly as tired, and he wasn't even stiff that evening. And the next day, he helped out. He was actually leader for a little bit. Oh, that hurt. That was a little too much for him. Then he started talking with the other geese. He made some new friends. And after a few days of heavy flying, or maybe it was a lot of days, Gaylen had lost track of time, he saw other geese. And he recognized it was his flock. It was his family. So when they all stopped for the evening, Gaylen thanked Goldie and said goodbye to his new friends. And then he flew over to his own group of geese. His mother was so happy to see him. Oh, he was happy to see her and all the rest of his family. He didn't realize how alone he felt. He just started talking with them and doing things with them, and I guess figuring out who he was and where he fit in with everyone else. See, Gaylen had learned that he couldn't do everything on his own, but with the help of others, he could accomplish quite a lot. That's something a lot of us have to learn and learn and learn and learn again, because we get caught up in all the things we have to do. God did not make us to be all on our own. The Bible tells us in Genesis that when God created us, he said, it's not good for a man to be by himself. I'll make a helper suitable for him. God has continued that tradition. He puts us in families. Now, things do happen. Sometimes families aren't very supportive. They can be abusive, even bad families. Sometimes bad things happen and we end up on our own. But that's where God often comes in. He can reach us, often when others can't. He can bring others into our lives to help us too. Friends, other people, support people, other members of our family, and they can help us. And that can put us in groups where suddenly we realize we can help them. Wow. Maybe God's a bit like Goldie. I don't know. I'm just happy he doesn't give up on us. Let us pray. Dear God, sometimes I don't like people telling me what to do. Sometimes I think I know it all or can do it all. But you know I don't know everything, and you know I can't do it all on my own. And yet, God, you're still there. You're still here beside me, trying to reach me, to teach me, to help me. Thank you. Thank you for being in my life. Thank you for giving me my family, my friends, for everyone who cares for me. And thank you for giving me people that I can care for. Thank you so much, God. In Jesus' name, amen. And thank you. And I hope you enjoyed the story about Gaylen geese, or Gaylen Goose rather, and have a really great day. Once again, I'm the Reverend Dr. Cheryl Gaver, and wishing you all the best. Take care. God bless, and see you next week. Bye-bye.